Rabbi Simon Jacobson is a scholar, author, and speaker. He is the publisher of the Algemeiner Journal, originally a Yiddish weekly founded by his father in the early 1970s.
Natan Yalimur was a writer who was first in the Lehi gang and was a very zealous and passionate Zionist and fighting the British occupation for an establishment of a state of Israel. Once the state was established, he became very disappointed in what he saw and really began to be actually an anti-Zionist writer and much more pro-Arab. And his articles in Hebrew in Israel would be very inflammatory, would incite a lot of people, very, very offensive to many. My father, followed him and knew who he was. Years later, when the Algemeiner was established, at some point in mid-70s, I think 73 or 74, he asked him to come on board to write, because he wrote in Yiddish, to write for the Algemeiner. Now, he asked my father, he says, you know that my writing is not exactly the same line of thought that you have. He says, yeah, it's a newspaper. We won't censor you. It's good for the paper to have your voice. And he began writing, and many of his articles were inflammatory. My father would get very strongly criticized, why are you publishing him? Now, not all articles were that way, but many were. And he was a very good writer. So he made a very good case and exposed many different angles of Israel's duplicity and hypocrisy and so on. And that was it, the newspaper. In Tov Shel Lamed Zayin, Rosh Hashanah, he was in New York, Natan Yalimur, so my father invited him to our home for a meal and said, afterwards, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, there's a Farbrengen. We'll go over to the Farbrengen and you'll meet the Rebbe. Now, this was not his environment, but he respected the Rebbe, so he agreed. After the Farbrengen was Kesha Bracha. So my father called him over, put him in front of the line. They went over to the Rebbe. My father introduced him, Natan Yalimur. The Rebbe smiled and said, "Das bist du?" Meaning, like he recognizes him. And the Rebbe says to him that you're not afraid of people that I know, because he would write these articles that were very inflammatory and didn't care what others thought. Aber was herzl bekeich Yerushalayim? He wasn't ready for such a question. So he decided to just say one word. He says, Rebbe, mitracht. And the Rebbe said, was ist das zu trachten? Remember, he told us afterwards, he didn't want to tell the Rebbe, no, I don't really believe, or I'm not sure what I believe. So he hinted to the Rebbe the story of Lev Yitzchak bar Ditchever. Lev Yitzchak bar Ditchever once saw a guy smoking on Shabbos and said to him, you probably don't know it's Shabbos today. So he said, I do know it's Shabbos. He says, so you probably don't know smoking is prohibited on Shabbos. He says, I know. Rebbe, I know it's Shabbos. I know you're not allowed to smoke. I don't believe. And I'm smoking on Shabbos intentionally. So Lev Yitzchak bar Ditchever, who is the Ev Yisrael, a lover of Jews, turns to God and turns to heaven and says, look, zeh, v'tayar ha'idis, a vilna zon ken liegen. How precious is a Jew, he doesn't want to tell a lie. So he didn't tell the story, but he just said, with the Ma'aseh Lev Yitzchak bar Ditchever. In other words, with his answer, mitracht, he was at least being truthful. He wasn't lying. The Rebbe, without missing a beat, says to him, the Unterschied is that Lev Yitzchak bar Ditchever hat gerät wegen der zweiten Eden und du das wegen sich. And he was very taken by the Rebbe's sharp response, which was right to the point. Then the Rebbe said to him that since you write, you should continue writing. So he says to the Rebbe, you read what I write? The Rebbe says, yes, I read everything you write. And I also read what you wrote in the Rosh Hashanah column. Since you write, you were blessed with writing, you should continue writing. And because you have a column, you cannot leave your space empty. So since you can't leave your column empty. You have to continue filling and writing it. And that concluded the Kesha Bracha. They came home, my father and Natan Yalimur, and they told the story. We were all very taken by this story. It was a powerful story. It was already 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning.